With us now is Laura McNeal, legal analyst, lecturer at Columbia University, and professor of law at the University of Louisville. Thanks so much for being here. Let's talk jury, because the jury is on now day 2 of deliberations today. Yesterday, during Judge Merchan's jury instructions, the jurors were taking copious notes, and they asked to rehear instructions as well as to rehear the testimony about David Pecker's phone call with Trump. What insight does any of this give you on how the jury is approaching deliberations or the things that they are discussing in that room?
Yeah, so it's important for me to note that if you are the defense, you are very nervous right now. This is not what you want to happen. If you're the prosecutor, this is exactly how you want these jury deliberations to unfold. What it suggests is that the jury is trying to do their job. They're trying to connect the documents directly to the crime and then to former President Donald Trump. So asking for David Pecker's testimony or to have it read to them again shows that they are really considering whether or not there is a direct link between these alleged crimes and President Trump, because this meeting with David Pecker that happened in 2015 at Trump Towers and with Cohen, that shows, again, if proven true, that there is a connection. If Donald Trump did indeed have the call and say what David Pecker says he said on the phone, it shows that he was directly involved with these alleged crimes. So it looks like the jury is really evaluating the credibility of David Pecker and whether or not there is a direct link, again, with President Donald Trump and the alleged crime.
The makeup of the jury, of course, we don't know too much about them. We know some basic things about what they do for a living, where they get their news, things like that. But we do know that 2 of the jurors are attorneys. How might this help and how might this hurt when it comes to both sides, the prosecution and the defense?
To be honest, I was surprised there are 2 attorneys on this jury. One thing I love about the jury is it does represent New York, very diverse. And I think having those 2 lawyers, even though those lawyers during voir dire said, you know, we don't have any experience with criminal law, but they still understand the basic foundational aspects of the law. And so I think they would be very helpful in helping the other jury members understand what does it mean when you evaluate the elements of each of these crimes and apply facts to the elements. What does it mean when you can make an inference based on facts on whether or not something did indeed happen? So I think they'll be helpful in just clarifying the foundational aspects of law. I'm a law professor. Every law student learns basic elements of criminal law. So I think that would help both sides, to be quite honest, the prosecution and the defense in that sense.
If he's found guilty, if the former president is found guilty, what happens immediately after? Because we're going to assume, right, he will appeal, but what is the immediate thing right after that?
Well, in New York, they're going to have what they call a post-felon review. And so a board will sit down with former President Donald Trump, explain, they'll ask him, you know, do you still plead non-guilty? He'll say yes. And they'll actually talk to him about the appeal timeline and what that looks like if he wants to pursue the appeal process. They'll discuss potential sentencing. A sentencing date will be set by the judge to actually sentence former President Donald Trump. But this is going to be very complicated because, again, he can serve up to 4 years in jail if convicted, but he could also just have probation or a temporary amount of home confinement. But we are in the middle of a national presidential election campaign, and so things can get very complicated depending how that sentencing goes, whether or not the judge, again, grants him probation, home confinement. So it's really up in the air at this point, but what he can expect is that initial post-felon conviction, a timeline for the appeal process, and a sentencing hearing date will be set.
There's obviously a chance that he could be found not guilty. So we know it's pretty cut and dry when it comes to being found guilty and not guilty. But then there's this case of perhaps there's a hung jury where they don't all agree. If that happens, what are we looking at that comes next?
Caroline, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a very high probability. There's 34 different counts, and it is difficult when you have 12 jury members all having to decide yes. People have different perceptions, different understanding. So if there is a hung jury, prosecutor in this case has the option of bringing the case again. That's not to his advantage. The defense now has its entire playbook. They know what to expect in a retrial. A retrial would definitely not happen prior to the upcoming presidential election. And so there'd be a lot for the prosecutor Bragg to consider if he wants to try the case again. Like I said, it would definitely be a win for President Trump, a win for his defense team, because, again, they know what to expect. They know how to build a stronger case to ensure a non-guilty verdict in the event of a retrial.
There's so many different moving parts here, and it is so interesting to watch. Thank you so much for walking us through it all. Laura McNeal, legal analyst, lecturer at Columbia University, and professor of law at the University of Louisville. Thanks so much for your time.